Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Screen25 Cinema on Demand, an online program created by Screen25 South Norwood's independent cinema. My name is Rōgan Graham. I'm a film critic and programmer, and I'm here with Menelik Shabazz, the writer, director, producer, and a pioneer of independent Black British cinema. How are you, sir?
I'm beautiful, very beautiful. I'm far away from you guys, but happy to connect in the way that you
happy to be far away, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad to hear you're well. I saw the documentary a few years ago, and then I rewatched it recently in preparation for this, and it's brilliant. I learned so much and was introduced to so much, and it was so cohesive in bringing everything together in terms of the origins, in terms of treatment from record labels and radio, in terms of how it linked in with protests. And I was just really, really amazed rewatching it. And I wonder how you feel sort of 10 years removed from the project.
I don't watch the film that often. So I kind of, for me, it's always good when you create something that has value and continues to have interest with people, 10 years down the line. And so I'm pleased about that. And pleased that we're still talking about it in this moment.
I read, I might have got this information wrong, but were you looking to do a part 2, or is that?
I am about to at this moment.
Yeah?
I am planning to do a part 2, yes, finally. I had planned to do it, I think, after I did the first one, because I still got a lot of material that I didn't use. But in that time, it was heavily pirated, and I didn't want the second one to be pirated as well. And so I thought, let me step back. And then, of course, other things come along, and 10 years down the line, I'm thinking about it and planning to do it, actually, yeah.
Speaking of, you said you had lots of footage. So am I right that making the first one, it was kind of intuitive for you? You saw that there was this event and you thought, I just have to document this. And it was all the old artists sort of coming together for a big show.
Yes, this project wasn't something that I thought about, consciously at the beginning. It was just a process, step by step. And it began just with that instinctive feel that I needed to document this historic moment with the Lovers Rock artists. And that was just my only thinking at the time. And then after shooting the film or shooting the concert, I start to think about what else can I do with it? How can I develop it? And then out of that thought, then I started to think about, other elements that could be brought into telling the story beyond just it being a concert and talking heads. And so it was all very instinctive. And one step led to another. So yes, that's how it came about, really.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Do you feel like, as an independent filmmaker, do you feel like a lot of your work is instinctive? You kind of have that freedom to just say, do you know what, this is speaking to me, so I'm gonna take the plunge. And yes,
it's pretty much the way I work, really. I work for my passion. I don't think of ideas just for the sake of it, or something that's in my head that I want to do. I mean, I've had those kind of experiences of ideas that's in your head, but nothing really ever comes from it. But it's kind of when I'm in that instinctive mode. And it was the same way in which I've developed, Burning Illusion came out of that instinct. Blood of Run came out of that instinct, and Lovers Rock. And so it's the way I work, and the freedom of being independent does allow me that situation, because the way in which the commissioning process happens here in the UK or in the UK is very different from when I first started out. When I first started out, there were producers who had ideas that they would take to the commissioners, and the commissioners were open to different ideas. Nowadays, it tends to be the commissioners set the tone. So this year we're doing this. Next year we're going to do that, and so on. So you then have to be jumping into their agendas. rather than your own instinctive way.
Yeah, I definitely get that feeling just looking back. There were so many great pioneering like film collectives, and some are still active, but it does seem a lot more disparate now. And you're either kind of a sort of megastar, or you're and getting all the funding sort of thing, or you're really having to pull pieces together. It doesn't seem like there's that healthy middle ground, which maybe there never was, but just from my
Well, I think things have gone backwards since, say, the 80s, late 70s, 80s. I think Channel 4, when it first started out, was a fantastic pioneer of independent talent and work that gave a grounding to a lot of people that are working. But I think that moment has really gone. And because in that moment also you had the workshop movement, which I was part of as well, with Chedo, and then you had us, Black Audio Film Collective and Sankofa and others that were in the mix and producing programs. Now we don't have that. We just have these kind of one-off moments that seems to keep us in the same warp, in the sense that we have moved from being producers of consistent programming in a way to being kind of kindergarten, kind of like training, development. We're still not quite good enough, so we have to be kept in this kind of pool, and all the resources are available to doing short films or some short little program. So you're really, so the wings have been cut off us. I think that's the way, because we've always had the talent. There's always been people that's just as good as anybody else in the UK market, in the UK scene, but they're always perceived in this kind of, you're not quite good enough, or and the other challenge that I had also was that the lack of writers. We have so many writers in the Black community, but they never get a chance to actually express themselves. And so the consequence of that is, if I go to one of the channels or try to get a commission or an idea, the first thing I ask is, who's a writer? And of course, the writers don't get the opportunity. So therefore, you're in this catch-22. So you find that some of the recent programs that have been on, the writers have been white writers who have been on these programs, with Black content or Black sensibility, and they're writing, representing. And so we're in that situation where, if the writers are not given that opportunity, then how are we, or how's the UK audience is going to get a sense of, our talents, so that's been a major issue in recent years for talent, is how do you get into this so-called diversity pool when you are not given opportunity?
Yeah, it definitely feels like, you're in this loop, and it's people fighting over the same small opportunities, when this shouldn't be the focus. There's a lot more than these small opportunities. It kind of creates this sort of, I think it really divides community, because your fight is this crabs in a barrel concept, thinking there's only one spot and there can only be one first, blah, 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 when that's not where we should even be looking at all. That should be nowhere near the focus. And that kind of tension between trying to sort of assimilate into an industry, not necessarily to sell out, but so you can feed yourself, so you can, survive off your art, versus authenticity. And you see that with the artists, how Lovers Rock is so enduring. I think because it was made with the audience in mind. It was made thinking about performance and thinking about house parties. It wasn't made with radio in mind, because radio didn't want anything to do, and that kind of trade-off is still sort of happening in the art.
Absolutely, because Lovers Rock really should have been on television. It was one of the highest grossing documentary in the cinema when it came out. And it has enough there for it to be, and people are surprised, and how come it wasn't shown on television? And I think part of that is to do with it's an independent voice that is authentic to itself. But importantly, it's a voice or film that brings a different narrative to what we are presented on television. So the narrative of Lovers Rock is of warmth, of love, and it's presenting Black people in that narrative. Whereas if you look at most of the television TV programs, they don't present that warmth of Black love or Black feeling. It's kind of always very hard or very, you know, so I think it suffers from, and even my second film, Looking for Love, again, these are films that are showing us Black people in positions where they are changing the narrative. And I don't think television really is interested in that, changing the narrative. And I experienced that when I did my first TV program, Breaking Point, which was kind of censored back in '78, where I went in, you know, in mainstream television thinking that, you know, TV is a great channel for changing people's ideas and actually being elevating the society. But then in that experience, I realized that actually, no, it's really about reinforcing the ideas that they're already there, and not about change. And I don't think it's changed in 2021 or 2021. It hasn't changed. And that's the saddest part of it, is that the narrative of how we're perceived, or the box that they want, you know, we're put in, is just continues. And because it calls on, it taps into kind of younger experiences, it then doesn't, one, allow older, more matured voices to enter into it.
Mm-hmm.
So that the younger ones can see and aspire to be greater than where they are, because there are other people that are working at another level. I mean, of course, Steve McQueen is the exception, but he's only the exception because he was the only one that managed to. But there are many people just as talented who are around, who haven't got that, who have been able to actually penetrate. And even in this moment, he's the only voice that is on, or allowed to be, if that's the word, to present ideas, and that's ridiculous. And so, yeah, it's a situation that requires a lot more than a diversity agenda, or the BBC, or the BBC throwing out, but they said 100 million on diversity programming and all of that. That's just, again, the usual token gestures that really do not actually get to the heart of the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It seems as very, I don't even know if piecemeal would be the right term, but it's like, you know, we're going to take this tiny part of the Black experience and blow it up, and that's the only thing you know about. And then going back just to the genre and the film, how it talks about, you know, this was born, the genre born out of love, to kind of fill in the gaps where there was, you know, so much anxiety and real trauma of living in this country in that time. And, you know, those two things coexist. It's not one or the other. You can't pick, you know, Black people are always happy and singing and dancing, or Black people are just suffering and miserable and angry. That's not, we're a whole people. And that's what I loved about the documentary and your work in general. But yeah, no, it definitely, all the diversity stuff, but that's the whole, I do think it's interesting what you said about not having like older people, but then you do have a lot of people my age and younger who will kind of bust through the door and think we've invented something possibly that is not the case. You know, we're not reinventing the wheel, but it's so important to have these dialogues. And I was wondering if with I guess these online platforms and social media and the internet just being able to showcase your work outside of television, do you feel like maybe that's bridged the gap, or has the potential to sort of bridge that gap, the knowledge gap between generations, do you think?
I would like to think so. I like to think like Burning an Illusion and The Story of Lovers Rock are films that introduce narratives that they're not familiar with. That's part of them, it's part of the experience, and at a level that they can aspire to in terms of telling their stories. I have been encouraged by the fact that more people are watching my films now, like Burning an Illusion, Story of Lovers Rock, or even Blood of Run and some other films that are produced, more people are now in tune with that than they ever were. So for me, it's a good step in terms of a younger generation. You know, my daughter and her generation of people, you know, they were introduced to my work and so on. So I hope that my legacy is one that will inspire and encourage others, certainly.
Good. Yeah, that's good to hear that. That you feel that there is that connection, because I think Brother Go On was the first film I saw, and it could have been maybe 2 years ago now, 3 years ago. I can't remember. I can't even remember how I came across it either, actually, and I wish I did, but I just did, and I was like, okay, no, but that's about round the corner. Like I live in South London, so I live down the road. I'm going, you know, pubs are open. I'm going for a drink in New Cross tonight. You know, so it was just like, okay, so there's this whole rich history here, and it has been, people did care enough to document it. Not only care enough, but had the resources, because you think we have no resources. No, when you have an iPhone, you know, and it's like, no, well, but it was just really eye-opening for me and refreshing, and I definitely appreciated it.
The theme of love is something that in the society and in a culture is not explored enough. And certainly with Lovers Rock, I don't think at the time people didn't appreciate. I mean, we've always had love music in the culture, you know, African-American reggae music. Love has been at the center of it. So it's not new in that sense. What was different is that it was a British expression of that love, that feeling that other people were expressing. And also we were able to have a space in order to be able to express that through the dance and the continuum of the dances that we've had. And so we were able to create a scene which was healing in that it allowed us to step out of our outside environments, the racism, what's happening at home, and other things at work or whatever. It allowed us to be in that space and to hear music that was particularly relevant to the UK, as opposed to other music that was love songs. But the Lovers Rock had a resonance because also had a lot of women that were in that space in terms of performing, which really gave it a certain interest or a certain cachet, a certain difference that allowed everyone to participate, male and female, to participate in it. And so that was important in that it, again, and it was around the expression of love. And because we as a people have had so much fracturing of our love in our experiences. And by fracturing, what I mean is that we're coming from a history where we weren't even allowed to love. I mean, you know, from the enslavement period, we weren't allowed to love. We weren't allowed to express ourselves in that way. And so we weren't allowed to develop families and so on. So we were having to now, after slavery, try to bring back that feeling that we've always had, but to express it. And we've always struggled up until this time to actually find that expression, that fullness of expression of love, which other people enjoy, because we are carrying so much baggage. I mean, we all carry baggage, every country, every culture. We all carry baggage, but we've had a particularly heavy one. And so, so the Lovers Rock kind of was an intervention into how we express that love in a way, but not fully being able to kind of to express it in its fullness, but certainly to bring that fragment, that feeling towards each other, male and female. And of course, the music is always central to that, of course. And so it was a special moment, a special time. And I'm sure we'll talk about where we are now with that love expression. But certainly we always talk about love as a fundamental thing in life, and that's the thing that gets everything going. But yet we still have a lot of difficulty trying to find it. And so I hoped in the film, I was able to give people who were present, who were in that era, and those who weren't in that area, a feeling of warmth, a feeling that we have always had and always express in every situation. And that was a moment that we were able to capture specifically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, the warmth was there. And I think one thing I found so profound is that expression of love, but also how young the artists were when they started. I wish I'd taken down names of who, but you know, someone tells the story of I came into sixth form and everyone's going, I heard your song on the radio, and someone's talking about she was 13 years old singing backup. So then to then see them in the documentary, it feels so rare that artists have, you know, their time to discuss, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, they're starting out, their heyday or whatever, you know, when they're fully with it. Does that make sense? You know, it's not like oh, you know, we're celebrating them too late. So it was lovely to see as well that they were able to get their flowers, but then also how profound it is that it was young people that really pioneered that sound as well, and that feeling of love.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at that time, one of the great things about what's evolved through Jamaican and through reggae is that we created an independent recording ability. So we were never dependent on the mainstream validating our songs. And so that ability to have our own studios meant that people can go in the studio at, you know, any particular age and record. It was that free. And so that was a great liberator of our sound, our expression, and our ability, because that music that was then recorded then went into the clubs, went into the parties. So, and so there was a direct relationship to you recording your music and the audience, you know, and you could literally be in a dance and hearing your own music being played.
Yeah.
And it was that direct.
Yeah, that's kind of incredible. I can't imagine that really now, you know. That's really special. And I mean, we spoke about how technology has kind of helped bridge the gap and bring your work to a new audience and so on. But then I feel like with music, it's almost kind of gone the other way, because it's, you know, everyone feels close to you and you can put on any song at any time from anywhere in the world. But, you know, that's a good thing. But then it also, you're maybe not paying attention to as close to home. And I don't know, how do you think like British music has sort of evolved since Lovers Rock? Because I would say it's taken on more of like an American influence, which, you know, for better or worse, I don't know. But
I think hip hop has I think hip hop and roots reggae were given more attention. Now it's not, because every music has its value. And then hip hop then began to become that moment. And hip hop was the opposite of love, in the sense of, not opposite of the expression of love. It isn't a love expression. All music is a love expression in a way, but I'm just saying that it had a much more male energy that was driving it. And that male energy had a different, that male energy was driven by the need to assert manhood, which is the Black male has always been and still is in that moment of trying to assert his manhood. And hip hop really was trying to assert manhood, in that this is what we're about. in the early days. I mean, obviously in this moment, it's kind of been taken over and has been for many, many years. Yeah, and it's just now in its own loop. But and even in America, because obviously they had love songs in America, that whole love, because even a lot of the Lovers Rock tunes were kind of copies of the African American songs, soul songs. You know what I mean? So they were making versions of it into reggae. So there's always a good link. But I think with every music, times change. Of course, you can't be in the same moment, forever. You have to change, and so that change was expressed Black assertion, or trying to assert this maleness is in the shadows of this, and that resonated with obviously around the world, with us in the UK, with our young men, and so on and so forth. And it was also a kind of push away from that lovey, warm feeling, in the sense that it was seen as kind of soft, you know what I mean, you're a soft guy if you're into all of that. And which is kind of how it's kind of developed now into over the years, is that if you're kind of into all the lovers, then you're kind of seen as very, you're not as strong, you're not as male. Although, there's a few exceptions in that world, but generally, and still today, if you use the word love to those Black men, it has no resonance. It has no resonance, really, in terms of music and so on. And even with women now, I mean, women still carry it, but it is that feeling that we've hardened up now, we've toughened up. And so there's no room for that kind of expression anymore. And also it's to do with our notions of love, in that we kind of tend to attach it to an emotional feeling, when it's much bigger and much more powerful than just an emotional feeling towards another person. It's the essence of who you are and how you express that in your life to the world, to your family, to your children. You know what I mean? So it's a much bigger expression. How you express it to your brethren, to your friends. Do you know what I mean? It's all of that. It's a much bigger, but we have kind of allowed it or succumbed to the kind of media kind of expression of it, shall we say.
I can't remember who said it, but it's that phrase that love is a doing word. It's an action. It's not just a passive thing that washes over you. You show love to people, and to everyone. The goal is the aim. And even in terms of hip hop, I think that in the early, when you listen to early stuff, there was definitely a lot more space for complexity. But then what's happened again, like what we said about TV and so on over here, is the parts that fit a particular narrative get cherry picked and get blown up. So then there's no room for anything else. But this has been a really lovely conversation. And I just wanted to ask, Lovers Rock 2, I know you're in the percolating sort of phase, but could you tell us anything about what might be included, if there's going to be an instructional dance for us?
This one I'm looking to focus on the fashion, because I think the fashion became very influential, and we didn't have much time to explore it in the way that we could now. And I also think the clubbing, the nightlife, and the different places that we went to, people talking about their experiences in that ritual space. So that's kind of, those are the two areas that I'm particularly focusing on at this time.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation. We've gone over. I'm really sorry,
Yes.
Alice, but
I've enjoyed it.
Good. And I'm excited to promote the film more, and stream it this way, and it's brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right.